Good afternoon, learners. Today we are here to discuss Donne's poem, A Valediction for Wedding Mourning. I am your Assistant Professor, Dr. Amit Kumar Singh from UPRTU, School of Humanities, English Department. This course is prescribed in our syllabus MAEN 101, which is British poetry, under the section of Metaphysical Poets. This poem, which is a metaphysical poem, incorporates many things, many themes, many concerns regarding separation, love, and many more. So, Donne's Valediction for Wedding Mourning. Donne, a 17th century writer, politician, liar, and priest, wrote a poem, A Valediction for Wedding Mourning, on the occasion of parting from his wife and more Donne. There is a famous saying about John Donne and his wife, that is, John Donne and Donne undone, which refers that Donne, after marrying his wife, metaphorically was ruined completely. But in literary circles, it may be a metaphor for criticizing someone, because Donne was much in love with his wife. Donne was going on a diplomatic mission to France, leaving his wife behind in England. A valediction is a farewell speech. This poem cautions against grief about separation and affirms the special, particular love the speaker and his lover share. Like most of Donne's poems, it was not published until after his death. This poem incorporates themes like separation, love, partition, but the poem was published after death of John Donne, like many more poems of his creation. Next. Now we will consider what is metaphysical poetry. Metaphysical is made up of two words, meta and physical. Meta means beyond and physical means within this world. So the word affirms the meaning that metaphysical is something that lies beyond this physical world. The word metaphysical is used to describe a concept in literature in which things are defined by something non-physical. Through the metaphysical world in literature, poets, writers, and critics try to explore the things which are beyond this world, which are not physical. Metaphysical writing is concerned with intangible experiences and feelings. The chief quality of metaphysical poetry is the use of elaborate figurative languages, original conceits, paradoxes, and philosophical topics. Metaphysical poetry enjoyed most during the 17th century in England and continental Europe. During this period, poets were relaxed, explored new ideas, and left the strict use of meter. John Donne is the chief exponent of the metaphysical poetry. As M.H. Abrams points out that John Dryden in his discourse concerning satire first time used the term metaphysics. Dryden stated that John Donne in his poetry affect the metaphysics. It means that Donne employs the terminology and abstruse argument of the medieval scholastic philosophers. In 1779, Samuel Johnson in his Life of Cowley extended the term metaphysical for a school of poets who willingly or unwillingly followed Donne. Donne's poems are opposed to the fluid, regular versification of his contemporaries, the cavalier poets. He often organized his poem as an urgent or heated argument with a reluctant mistress or an intruding friend or God or death or with himself. He implemented a subtle and often deliberate, outrageous logic. He was realistic, ironic, and sometimes cynical in his treatment of the complexity of human motives, especially in the sexual relationship. As we can consider that metaphysical poetry delves deeper material or subject matters outside this physical world, there is a long discourse on current issues of love, sexual desire, women, urgings, his likes, dislikes, and the themes like urgent need of sexual intercourse and the theme of love, separation, many more. Later on, the term metaphysical poetry was used to denote the followers of metaphysical school of poetry propagated by Donne. Next, chief characteristics. Now we will see what are the chief characteristics of the metaphysical school of poetry or metaphysical poetry. One of the most prominent characteristics of this movement is the spoken quality of the poetry that can communicate with us. Words used in such type of poetry are, if they are interacting with us, something that many other writers of that time did not approve of. Other common features include the use of colloquial diction, philosophical exploration, new and original conceits, irony, and the relaxed use of meter. Poets whose works have been categorized as metaphysical often seek out the answer to the questions such as, does God really exist? Or does humankind really have a free choice? Or what is the nature of reality or truth? Metaphysical poets often arouses the questions like, does really God exist? Is there any existence of God within this world or outside of this world? What is the nature of reality or truth? And what is the nature of reality or truth? As we consider, it is the truth or something else beyond this. Or humankind really have a free choice? Are there any such category where the men are free to perform according to their will? And what is the nature of their choice? Such questions were aroused by metaphysical schools of poetry or metaphysical poets. Next, carpe diem. Sometimes people also called it carpe diem. Carpe diem is a theme found in metaphysical poetry, which means to seize the day, to have the day at full grasp, at as more as we can. We should enjoy every moment of a day, of an hour, and doing so, we can enjoy life fully. Carpe diem means seize the day, to have the day at full. It is a Latin phrase from one of the Horace's odes which suggests make the most proficient use of present time, to use the present time full. The speaker in a carpe diem poem emphasizes that the life is short and time is fleeting. He urges his auditor, who is often a virgin, reluctant to change her condition to make the most of present pleasure. And doing so, for making a person who is often a reluctant virgin lady to have sexual intercourse or making love, who is often reluctant to her condition, and poets desire, wants to make the most proficient use of present time, as the time is ever changing, fleeting, and it is always moving at a fast pace, steady pace. So we need to use every second, every moment of time for enjoyment, for making love. Next, a valediction for wedding morning at a glance. Now we will see what is poem about. A valediction for wedding morning 1613 is a poem by the metaphysical poet Donne. The central conceit compares two lovers to the legs of drafting compasses. Written by Donne shortly before an extended trip away from his wife, and the poem is considered a classic of its genre. A valediction for wedding morning, we have a classic example of the metaphysical conceit, and somehow, as only Donne can do, he creates in this witty, ingenious, and intensely cerebral work one of the most romantic works of poetry this reader has ever read. In 1633, John Donne creates this poem. This poem is a song during the separation from his wife. During the time of 1633, he was going to a trip for foreign for a diplomatic concern, and he composed this poem on the occasion. Next. Here is the text of Valediction for wedding mourning. A virtuous men pass mildly away and whisper to their souls to go, while some of their sad friends do say the breath goes now, and some say no. Let us melt and make no noise, no tear floods nor high tempests move, and never profession of our judge to tell the lady of our love. Loving of the earth brings harms and fear, men reckon what I did and meant, it interpretation of the spheres, though greater far is innocent. Dull, sulbanary lover's love, whose soul is sense, cannot admit absence, because it doth remove those things which eliminated it. But we by a love so much refined, that ourselves know not what it is, enter assured of the mind, careless, eyes, lips, and hands to miss. Our two souls, therefore, which are one, though I must go, endure not it, a breach but an expansion like gold to array thinness beat. If they be two, they are two to so, as stiff twin compasses are two, thy soul, the fixed foot, makes no so to move, but doth if the other do. And though it in the center sit, yet when the other far doth roam, it leans and hearkens after it, and grows erect as that comes home. Such wilt thou be to me, who most, like the other foot, obliquely run. Thy firmness makes my circle just, and makes me end where I began. So, this was the text, and now we will see the theme of the text of this poem. As we have discussed the text of the poem, now we will have the theme and central idea of the poem. What is the poem about? What is poem written for? Why the poem is important, so much important in metaphysical circle. The speaker opens with an image of good men dying quietly, softly urging their souls to leave their bodies. These virtuous deaths are so imperceptible that the dying man's friend disagree about whether or not the man have stopped breathing yet. The speaker argues that he and the lover he is bidding farewell to should take this death as model and part away silently. They should not give in to the temptation to weep and sigh excessively. In fact, grieving so openly would degrade their private love by broadcasting it into ordinary people. Natural earthly disturbances such as earthquakes hurt and scare human beings. Ordinary people notice these events happening and wonder what they mean. However, the movements of the heavens, while being larger and more significant, go unnoticed by most people. Boring, commonplace people feel a kind of love that, because it depends on sensual connection, can't handle separation. Being physically apart takes away by the physical bond that their love depends on. Now, the poem as a complete, compact written draft tells about the separation. When someone takes part from us, we feel heavily sorrow for them. But at the same time, poet says that it is a blessing who someone is dead now or separated from us is going to heavenly abode. He is
now free from the bondage of words. The speaker and his lover, on the other hand, experience a more rare and special kind of bond. They can't even understand it themselves, but they are linked mentally, certain of one another on an non-physical plane. Because of this, it matters less to them when their bodies are apart. When the two lovers are physically connected, they feel so sorry, they feel heavily for their separation, because their physical connection is parted. But on the other hand, that poet says, we are not just physically connected, we are also mentally connected. We are connected by heart, we are connected by emotions. So this timely or short-timed separation, partition can't make us part. We are joined by emotions. Our love is a strong bondage within us. The souls of the lovers are unified by love. Although the speaker must leave, their souls will not be broken apart. Instead, they will expand to cover the distance between them as fine metal expands when it is hammered. Now the poet says, the connection between them is expanded like a metal when it is forged and hammered. It expands. In the same way, their love will also expand, and two separating lovers will be connected automatically. If their souls are in fact individual, they are nevertheless linked in the way the legs of drawing compasses are linked. The soul of the lover is like the stationary foot of the compass, which does not appear to move itself but actually does respond to the other foot's movement. Now, here, poet metaphorically compares himself and her lover like two legs of compasses, where a single leg of compass is steadily firm while the other moves around. In the same way, poet says we are two separated legs of compasses which seem separated but interconnected, because when the first leg is centered automatically and steadily, firmly on the paper, second revolves around it. It means they are not separated. They are interconnected. They are joined by the feelings of love. They are mentally connected. They are heartily connected, and they are spiritually connected. This stationary compass foot sits in the center of a paper. When the other compass foot moves further away, the stationary foot changes its angle to lean in that direction, as if longing to be nearer to its partner. As the moving foot returns, closing the compass, the stationary foot stands straight again, seeming alert and excited. Now the poet says, this stationary compass foot sits in the center of a paper. The foot of the compass, which is firm and steadily sits in the center of the paper, is interconnected with the other leg. When the other compass foot moves, when the second leg of the compass moves here and there, further away, the stationary foot changes its angle to lean in that direction. The second leg, which is stationary, leans forward, bends forward to the side of the revolving leg, as if longing to be nearer to its partner. Poet says that it assumes, it shows that he wants to be nearer and closer to his partner. As the moving foot returns, closing the compass, the stationary foot stands straight again, seeming alert and excited. And when the revolving leg of the compass ends his works, and returns to its center. The first leg, which is straight and stationary, seems as if it is alert and excited to meet the second leg, metaphorically her partner, again and reunite. The speaker's lover, he argues, will be like his stationary foot, while he himself must travel a circuitous, indirect route. Her fixed position provides him with the stability to create a perfect circle which ends exactly where it began, bringing the speaker back to his lover once again. Poet says, as the compass performs his work, two legs of the compass perform their work. In the same way, the poet will return from his sea voyage journey, political motives, and will be soon reunited with his lover again. Thank you. So, today in brief, we have discussed John Donne's poem, metaphysical poem, A Valediction for Wedding Mourning. This was a short explanatory note on Valediction for Wedding Mourning by John Donne. In our next lecture, we will discuss about the explanatory notes of Valediction for Wedding Mourning, which will be a long discourse, and we hope, and our institution hope, that it will be a good move towards our students, our learners, for writing a good explanatory notes. So thank you once again. Thank you so much.